Celebrations and festivals. This is one of the most common Part 2 topics in the IELTS speaking exam, and it is one that most students get wrong in exactly the same way. They describe the festival, what happens, what people eat, what people wear, and they stop there. The examiner does not need a description of a festival. The examiner needs to hear you think, to hear your personal relationship with this experience, what it means to you, why it matters. In this video, I am going to show you what a Band 8 answer on this topic actually sounds like, how it is structured, what language it uses, and how it goes beyond description into genuine reflection. Then we will move into Part 3, the discussion questions that follow this cue card, because Band 8 students do not just answer well, they discuss well. Let us start. Here is the cue card. Describe a festival or celebration that you enjoy. You should say what the festival or celebration is, when and where it takes place, what people do during this festival or celebration, and explain why you enjoy it. In the real exam, you have 1 minute to prepare. You can make notes. Then you speak for up to 2 minutes. Most students use that preparation minute to think about what to describe. Band 8 students use it to think about what to say beyond the description. That difference is everything. First, here is what most students say.
I would like to talk about Diwali, which is a festival celebrated in India. It happens every year in October or November. During this festival, people light lamps and candles, and they burst firecrackers. They also eat sweets and give gifts to family members. I enjoy this festival because it is very colorful and joyful. It is celebrated by millions of people and it brings happiness to everyone.
You can hear the problem immediately. That answer is accurate. It covers the bullet points, and it sounds like it was written for a test. It is very colorful and joyful. It brings happiness to everyone. These phrases mean nothing. Every festival is colorful. Every celebration brings happiness. These words do not distinguish your answer from anyone else's. Band 5 answers describe what happens. Band 8 answers describe what it means. Now let us hear the difference.
The festival that comes to mind immediately is Diwali, though I want to talk about it from a particular angle, which is what it actually feels like to be in the middle of it, rather than just what happens during it. It takes place every year, usually in October or November. And where I grew up, it was the kind of event that changed the texture of the entire neighborhood for about a week beforehand. People would start cleaning their houses, not in a routine way, but in a deliberate, purposeful way, as though the physical space needed to be made ready for something significant. That preparation for me was always as much a part of the festival as the day itself. On the day, there are lamps, small clay ones called diyas, placed along windowsills and doorways. And the particular quality of that light in the evening is something I find genuinely difficult to describe accurately. It is warm in a way that electric light is not. It makes everything look slightly different from how it looks the rest of the year. What people do varies from family to family, but the constant is the gathering. Extended family, neighbors, people you perhaps do not see as often as you should. There is food, sweets mostly, many of which are made at home rather than bought. And there is an unhurried quality to the evening that is quite different from ordinary social occasions. Why I enjoy it is something I have thought about, because my enjoyment of it has changed as I have got older. When I was young, it was about the firecrackers and the sweets and the noise and the brightness. Now it is something quieter than that. It is the particular feeling of a tradition that has been repeated so many times that it has its own weight. The sense that the same things are being done in the same ways because they have always been done that way, and that there is something worth preserving in that continuity. It is one of those experiences that is harder to explain to someone who did not grow up with it than it is to simply feel.
Now, let us look at 8 phrases from that answer that you can use immediately in your own exam. Changed the texture of the entire neighborhood. Use this when you want to describe how an event transformed the feeling of a place, not just what it looked like, but how it felt to be there. This is sensory and specific in a way that very beautiful or very lively simply is not. In a deliberate, purposeful way. Use this to contrast automatic or routine behavior with intentional, meaningful action. It signals that something matters, that the person doing it understands why they are doing it, as though the physical space needed to be made ready for something significant. Use this when you want to describe preparation that goes beyond the practical, preparation that is also symbolic or emotional. The phrase, as though, introduces a layer of interpretation that sounds sophisticated without being complicated. A particular quality of that light. Use this when describing sensory details that are specific to a place or experience. The word particular signals precision. You are not talking about light in general, but the specific character of this light, in this moment, in this place. An unhurried quality to the evening. Use this to describe occasions that feel different from ordinary social events, slower, more present, less driven by what comes next. It is a precise and evocative alternative to saying the evening was relaxed or enjoyable. My enjoyment of it has changed as I have got older. Use this when you want to show that your relationship with something has depth, that it means different things to you at different stages of your life. This signals emotional intelligence and genuine reflection, a tradition that has been repeated so many times that it has its own weight. Use this when you want to describe the accumulated meaning of something that happens repeatedly, the sense that continuity itself has value. The word weight here is doing metaphorical work. It is not a burden, it is significance. Harder to explain to someone who did not grow up with it than it is to simply feel. Use this as a closing line for any answer about a cultural or personal experience that resists easy description. It acknowledges the limits of language in a way that sounds sophisticated rather than vague. Now, part 3. These are the discussion questions the examiner might ask after a festival or celebration cue card. These questions are not about your festival, they're about society, culture, and values. The answer needs to go further than personal experience. Why do you think festivals and celebrations are important to communities?
I think they serve several functions that are genuinely important, and not all of them are obvious. The most visible function is the social one. Festivals bring people together in a context that is different from everyday life. That difference matters. The ordinary social fabric, work, routine, individual lives running in parallel, does not create the kind of shared experience that builds genuine community. Festivals do. They create a moment in which people in the same place are doing the same thing for the same reasons. And that shared experience produces a sense of belonging that is very difficult to generate any other way. But I think there is a less discussed function which is equally important: the transmission of cultural identity across generations. A child who participates in a festival is not just enjoying themselves, they are absorbing something about who their community is and where it comes from. That transmission happens without anyone consciously teaching it, which is perhaps why it is so effective.
Notice the structure: a clear position, one developed reason, then a second, less obvious point. That is exactly what part 3 rewards. Next question. Do you think traditional festivals are changing because of modern lifestyles?
Yes, and I think the change is happening in ways that are both inevitable and worth being honest about. The most visible change is commercial. Many festivals that were originally rooted in religious or agricultural traditions have become significant economic events, occasions for consumer spending rather than communal ritual. That is not necessarily a corruption of the original, but it is a shift in emphasis that changes the character of the experience. There is also a change in how festivals are experienced. Social media has introduced a kind of performance dimension that did not exist before. The documentation of the celebration rather than simply the participation in it. Whether that enriches or diminishes the experience is a genuine question. I think the honest answer is that it does both, depending on the person and the context. What has perhaps changed less than people assume is the underlying human need that festivals serve. The need for shared experience, for marked time, for moments that feel different from ordinary days. That need seems to be quite persistent, even as the specific forms it takes evolve.
That closing sentence, the underlying need persists even as the forms evolve, is what elevates this answer from band 7 to band 8. It shows that the speaker is thinking about why, not just what. Question 3. Should governments do more to preserve traditional festivals?
I think there is a legitimate role for governments here, but the nature of that role matters considerably. The kind of government involvement that seems most appropriate is facilitative rather than prescriptive, creating the conditions in which festivals can survive naturally if communities choose to maintain them. Funding cultural organizations, protecting public spaces for communal celebration, ensuring that minority cultural traditions have visibility alongside majority ones. These seem to me reasonable and valuable. What I would be more cautious about is the kind of preservation that becomes performance. Festivals maintained for tourism or national branding rather than because they mean something to the communities they come from. A festival preserved in that way tends to lose the very quality that made it worth preserving. So, yes to support, but with a clear distinction between enabling communities to make their own choices and deciding on their behalf what should be kept.
The phrase facilitative rather than prescriptive is exactly the kind of vocabulary the examiner is looking for in a Band 8 Part 3 answer. It is precise, it is analytical, and it signals that the speaker understands the difference between types of government action. Question 4. How do you think the way people celebrate festivals will change in the future?
Difficult to predict, which I think is itself worth acknowledging. What I suspect is that the physical in person dimension of festivals will become more rather than less valued as digital life becomes more dominant. When most of your daily interactions are mediated through screens, the experience of being physically present with a large number of people, sharing something in real time, becomes more distinctive and more sought after rather than less. I also think there will be increasing diversity in how festivals are observed. Not a single shared form, but multiple variations coexisting, with people choosing the version that is most meaningful to them. Whether that individualization enriches the experience or fragments the shared dimension of it is something I genuinely do not know. What I would be confident about is that the human appetite for marked time, for occasions that feel different from ordinary days, is not going to disappear. The specific forms will change. The underlying need, I suspect, will not.
Beginning with genuinely difficult to predict and acknowledging that is a band 8 move. It signals intellectual honesty. The examiner rewards speakers who engage with genuine uncertainty rather than pretending to be certain about things that are actually uncertain. Here are 6 phrases from the Part 3 answers that work across many different topics, not just festivals. Facilitative rather than prescriptive. When you want to describe the appropriate role of government, supporting rather than controlling. The underlying need persists even as the forms evolve. When you want to argue that something essential remains constant despite surface level change. A performance dimension that did not exist before. When you want to describe how social media has changed the way people experience events. Enabling communities to make their own choices. A sophisticated way of describing government support without government control. The transmission of cultural identity across generations. When you want to talk about how traditions are passed down without using the word teach. A sense of belonging that is very difficult to generate any other way. When you want to argue for the importance of shared physical experience. These are not phrases to memorize and repeat. They are examples of the kind of thinking that Band 8 requires, specific, reflective, and honest about the complexity of experience. And with this, we come to an end of this video. Thanks for watching till the end. And for this, I want to give you a free gift which has 300 exam-worthy phrases like these, completely free. The Band 8 Phrase Bible is linked in the description. Download it, study it, and use it alongside these videos. If you want to see how this same level of language works when the topic is a place rather than a festival, the video on describing a place you love visiting is the one to watch next. The link is on screen now. See you in the next one.